Single dad took her in from the storm and discovered the CEO who needed more than shelter. The storm came before the night fully arrived. Dark clouds rolled over the farming colony like a heavy blanket. The wind howled across the open fields and bent the tall grain almost flat. Small houses stood far from each other, each with its own lights and solar towers. Usually the colony was calm, quiet, and slow. That night, it felt alive and angry. The single father stood at his doorway and watched the sky. His name was Daniel. He had lived on the Edge colony for 6 years. After his wife died from a sickness, he moved here to raise his daughter somewhere peaceful. The colony was far from the busy core worlds. No traffic lanes, no city noise, no tall buildings, only fields, machines, and stars. His daughter, Lila, sat near the heater inside. She was 8 years old, with curious eyes and a calm voice. She liked to read old adventure books and ask questions about space. She did not fear storms, but she respected them. The wind pushed against the door. Dust and rain hit the walls. Daniel checked the sky again. Lightning flashed in strange colors, not just white, but faint blue and purple. That was not normal. He had seen many storms on this planet, but none like this. The house lights flickered once, then twice. Then they went out. The heater shut down. The soft hum of machines died. Only the wind and thunder remained. Daniel sighed and moved to the backup panel. He turned on the small battery reserve. A few dim lights returned, enough to see, not enough for comfort. "This storm is strong," he said. Lila looked up from her book. "It feels strange." Daniel smiled gently. "Storms always feel big when you are small." She shook her head. "No, the air feels warm." He paused. Warm storms were rare here. This planet usually had cold rain. He checked the readings on his wristpad. The temperature outside was rising instead of falling. Another flash of lightning cut across the sky. For a second, the fields were bright as day. In that bright moment, Daniel thought he saw something near the far fence. A shape. Maybe a person. Maybe just moving grain. He waited for the next flash. His eyes stayed on the fence line. Lightning came again. There was a figure near the gate. Daniel's heart beat faster. No one walked outside during a storm like this? It was dangerous. The electric charge in the air could knock a person down. Travelers always waited storms out in their vehicles. He grabbed a rain cloak from the wall. "Stay inside," he told Lila. She stood up. "Someone is outside." "I know. She is scared," Lila said softly. Daniel looked at her. "She?" Lila nodded. "I feel it." Daniel did not ask how. Lila sometimes said odd things, but she was often right about people. He opened the door carefully. The wind pushed hard against him. Rain hit his face like thrown sand. He stepped into the storm. The ground was muddy and slippery. He moved slowly toward the gate light. His boots sank into wet soil. Thunder boomed so loud it shook his chest. Another lightning flash showed the figure again. Closer now. A person leaning against the fence. "Hey!" Daniel shouted. His voice almost vanished in the wind. "Can you hear me?" No answer. He reached the gate. The figure was a woman. She wore a dark travel suit, but it was torn in places. The material looked smooth and strange, like liquid metal cloth. He had never seen fabric like it on colony markets. She was half-conscious, barely standing. One hand held the fence, the other pressed against her side. Daniel opened the gate and caught her before she fell. She was light, colder than he expected. Her skin felt too cool for this warm storm. "Can you walk?" he asked. Her eyes opened slightly. They were sharp and alert, even in weakness. She tried to speak, but only a soft breath came out. Daniel helped her step by step back to the house. The wind pushed them from behind. Twice he almost lost balance. Finally, they reached the door. Lila was waiting. She had already placed a blanket near the heater. Daniel guided the woman inside and shut the door tight. The storm noise softened but still filled the air. He helped the woman sit. Lila handed the blanket without fear. The woman looked at the child for a long second, like she was surprised. "It's okay," Lila said. "You are safe." The woman's lips moved. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet but clear. Daniel brought water. She drank slowly. Her hands trembled, but her eyes watched the room carefully. She noticed the tools on the wall, the old photos, the farming boots by the door. She noticed everything. "You came from the road?" Daniel asked. She gave a small nod. "There are no transports scheduled tonight," he said. "No," she replied. "There were not." That answer felt strange. Daniel did not push. She looked exhausted. "What is your name?" he asked. She paused just a bit too long. "Mira? All right. I am Daniel. This is Lila. You can rest here until the storm ends." "Thank you," she said again, more firmly. Daniel brought a medkit. He scanned her injuries. Small cuts, bruises, nothing broken. But her suit had a deep tear near the side, and under it he saw a thin device attached to her belt. It gave a faint glow. He pretended not to stare. Travelers had gadgets, but this one looked advanced, far beyond colony tools. He cleaned her wounds. She did not complain, not once. Outside, the storm grew louder. The wind screamed around the house corners. A blue lightning bolt struck somewhere close. The floor vibrated. Then the radar panel near the wall made a soft beep. Daniel frowned. That panel tracked air traffic and orbit movement. It rarely beeped out here. He walked over and tapped it on. The small screen showed signals entering the system. Not one ship, several. He leaned closer. The codes were not colony trade ships. They were high-level encrypted signals. He felt a cold weight in his stomach. Behind him, Mira watched the screen. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes tightened for a moment. "Traffic?" she asked lightly. "Looks like it," Daniel said. "Strange time to arrive." She looked away. Storms do not stop everyone. Lila sat beside Mira. "You were running." Daniel turned. "Lila, it's all right," Mira said softly. She looked at the child. "Why do you say that?" "You looked back at the sky when Papa found you," Lila replied. "Like someone was behind you." Mira studied her, then gave a small smile. "Smart girl." Daniel felt the room grow quiet. He set extra blankets on the couch. "You should sleep. Storm will last hours." Mira lay down, but did not fully relax. Even with closed eyes, she seemed alert. Daniel dimmed the lights. He sat near the window, listening to the storm. He told himself the ships were just passing. Maybe a patrol. Maybe traders seeking shelter in orbit. But deep down, he felt the timing was wrong. Hours passed slowly. Thunder became less frequent. Rain softened. Near midnight, Daniel noticed a faint glow from Mira's side. The small device on her belt was active. A star map floated above it in tiny light. Points of light marked systems far beyond local charts. He had seen maps at the colony office. This one showed routes deeper than any farmer needed. A blinking signal appeared on the map. Then another. Someone was searching. Daniel looked at Mira. Her eyes were open. She knew he saw it. For a moment they said nothing. Then she reached and turned the device off. "I am sorry," she said quietly. Daniel crossed his arms. "Are those ships here for you?" She did not answer directly. "I did not plan to bring trouble to your door." "That is not an answer." She looked toward Lila, who was now asleep in a chair. "Sometimes a person must choose between a bad place and a worse one." Daniel studied her face. She did not look like a criminal. She looked like someone carrying a heavy choice. Outside, the radar beeped again. The signals were closer now. Entering low orbit, Daniel exhaled slowly. His quiet farm night had changed into something else. "You can stay until morning," he said at last. "After that, we talk." Mira nodded. "That is fair." The storm began to fade. Only soft rain remained. But the sky above the colony was no longer empty. Small moving lights could be seen between clouds, ships holding position. Daniel did not sleep much after that. Lila murmured in her dreams. Once she said, "They are looking down." Daniel sat awake, watching the dark window, feeling that the storm was only the beginning. Something larger had arrived with the stranger from the rain, something that reached beyond fields and simple lives. And in the quiet hours before dawn, the colony that was once forgotten by the galaxy had suddenly been found. Mira slept in the small, spare room Daniel had prepared. She was quiet, but her mind raced. Even in rest, she scanned the walls, the lights, and the furniture. Everything was simple, ordinary, but in her trained eyes, every detail mattered. Daniel left the door slightly open. He wanted to respect her space, yet he could not ignore the quiet tension that filled the house. Lila, curious and cautious, stayed near the kitchen table, drawing pictures of the storm and the glowing light she had seen outside. Morning arrived slowly. The sky was gray and small puddles reflected the weak sun. The storm had passed, leaving a damp smell over the fields. Daniel fixed breakfast and called Mira to the table. She came slowly, wrapped in a blanket over her torn suit. Her movements were careful, almost cautious, as if each step had a purpose. "Eat," Daniel said simply. "You need strength." Mira nodded and took the offered food. Her fingers touched the plate lightly, precise, almost surgical. She ate quietly, scanning the house as she did. Daniel noticed it, but chose not to comment. Sometimes people like her observed before trusting. "You should tell me more," Daniel said finally, breaking the silence. "About who you are. Why were you out there in the storm?" Mira looked up, her eyes meeting his. She measured him with a glance that seemed to weigh his patience and understanding. "I cannot tell everything," she said slowly. "But I can say that I am not from this colony, and the people looking for me are dangerous." Daniel frowned. "Dangerous? How?" "They are trained to find me," she replied. "They will not ask questions. They will not negotiate." Whew. "They want me brought back by any means." Lila tilted her head. "Are you a criminal?" Mira's lips curved into a faint smile. "No. I am someone who refused to follow orders, and some orders are dangerous." Daniel's mind turned over her words. Someone refusing orders, hunted, and running into a storm. He realized immediately that Mira was not an ordinary traveler. Yet, she was not aggressive, not threatening. She looked tired, but careful. "Can I trust you?" he asked quietly. Mira's eyes held his. "You already did," she said. "You brought me in from the storm. That counts for something." Daniel nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her presence. He knew the storm was over, but the danger had only begun. Over the next few hours, Mira moved around the house, examining things. She found the old generator, the water purifier, and the communication devices. In minutes, she adjusted them, repaired broken circuits, and optimized power output. Daniel watched in surprise. He had been a farmer, a simple technician at best. She worked with speed and knowledge far beyond anything he had seen. "You fix things fast," he said. "I fix what must be fixed," she replied. "It is not about speed. It is about survival." Daniel nodded, understanding more than he expected. Survival meant everything in a place like this. The colony was safe from most threats, but a person being hunted would find even a simple farm a strong fortress if used wisely. The morning passed quietly until the small radar panel beeped again. Daniel checked it immediately. A few signals hovered near the outer system, invisible to the eye but real on the panel. Ships were scanning the colony. They were not close enough to attack yet, but the danger was near. Mira watched the screen silently. She did not touch it, did not give instructions, but Daniel saw her brow tighten. She knew the patterns. She knew the ship's technology. "But, friend, they are searching," she said finally. "They can find someone in ours if they have the right signal. They have mine." Daniel felt the tension rise. "Do they know where you are?" "They suspect," she said. "I tried to block my trace, but some devices are impossible to hide completely." He sat down heavily. "So they are coming here?" "They may come," she said. "Or they may try to cut the colony off. It depends on how quickly they think I escaped." Daniel glanced at Lila, who was drawing quietly, unaware of the radar beeps but sensing the tension. He had to make a choice: protect this stranger and risk everything, or send her away and hope she survived alone. "Why would anyone want you so badly?" he asked. Mira hesitated. "Because I hold knowledge that can change power in the galaxy. It is knowledge that others want to use for control, for profit, for destruction." Daniel swallowed hard. "Destruction?" She nodded slowly. "I have information about a weapon that can destroy worlds. I refuse to hand it over. My own people, those I worked for, consider me a traitor now. They want me back before I stop them completely." Daniel's mind raced. Weapons, destruction, and now a single hunter tracking her to a farm on a distant colony. It felt impossible, yet her calm demeanor made it real. She was telling the truth. "What can I do?" he asked. "If they come, I can't fight them alone." Mira looked at him with a new focus. "You do not need to fight them the way they fight. You fight with what you know. You fight with what your people have." He frowned. "We have nothing but tools for farming. And me. And your daughter," Mira added quietly. "She is brave. She can help you think in ways they will not expect." Daniel realized she was observing everything and everyone, learning, not as an enemy, but as someone who needed to plan. He felt respect for her intelligence and strategy, but respect also carried worry. Later, when the sun broke through the clouds, Mira asked to see the small barn outside. He moved like someone trained, stepping carefully on mud and puddles, inspecting equipment, assessing the land. Daniel followed at a distance. "You understand farming?" she asked. "Enough to survive," he said. "Why?" "Because I need to know what can be used for defense," she replied. "Not to attack, but to protect. Even simple tools, used cleverly, can outsmart technology if you know the terrain." Daniel was surprised by her words. She spoke with calm confidence, yet he could feel urgency under it. She was already planning for a threat. By mid-afternoon, Mira had shown Lila simple exercises: how to hide from sight, how to observe quietly, how to listen to patterns in movement outside. Lila, excited and curious, followed instructions eagerly. It was more like a game. but Daniel saw the girl's mind sharpening in ways that might matter. As the evening approached, Mira stayed at the table with Daniel while he cooked a simple meal. They spoke quietly. "I need to ask," Daniel said carefully. "You said your people want a weapon? What kind of weapon?" Mira's face darkened. "Something that can destabilize stars. Something that can erase entire planets. I refuse to complete it. They sent hunters to bring me back, alive or not. I have the master codes hidden. Without them, the weapon is useless. But with them, someone could end entire systems." Daniel sat back, shocked. The calm life he had known, the simple world of fields and stars, now felt fragile. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Why come to a small farm in a distant colony?" Mira's gaze softened slightly. "Because no one would expect me here. Because the storm gave me a chance to escape. Because I needed shelter. Because I needed people who could act without fear." Daniel looked at her. He realized this stranger, this woman, carried more than just danger. She carried responsibility, knowledge, and a life the galaxy wanted to control. He also understood that protecting her could mean everything for the future. As night fell, Daniel set up small sensors around the house. Mira helped, adjusting them to increase coverage. They moved silently, each aware of the other's presence and skill. Lila watched from the doorway, half asleep, sensing the tension but not fully understanding. When all was ready, Daniel asked, "Will you rest now?" "I will try," Mira replied. "But sleep will not come easily. They are out there. They are searching. The storm is over, but the real storm is just beginning." Daniel nodded. He could see the truth in her eyes. She had hidden strength, and now she depended on him. And he depended on her knowledge, her intelligence, her courage. Outside, the colony was quiet again. The fields glistened with leftover rain. But radar blips flickered far above, distant yet closing. Ships that could move faster than sound, faster than light, were tracking her, scanning for signs of life. Inside, Mira rested on the floor with blankets, Lila asleep beside her. Daniel watched from the doorway, ready for the night, ready for decisions he never thought he would face. He realized that his farm, once ordinary, had become a fortress. His daughter, once carefree, had become part of a new plan, and Mira, once a stranger, had become a presence he could not ignore. The first storm had passed, but a bigger storm waited in the darkness, and it would test courage, trust, and the human heart in ways no one on this quiet colony had seen before. Daniel whispered softly, "We will face it together." Mira's eyes opened, faint light reflecting on her face. "Together," she agreed, and in the stillness of the small house, under the stars that watched from above, the first connection formed between a single father, his daughter, and the stranger who had fallen from the storm. The galaxy beyond seemed large, dangerous, and full of challenges. But here, in this quiet home, a plan, fragile and hopeful, was beginning. The quiet night stretched ahead with whispers of ships, shadows, and dangers no one could yet fully see. But Daniel, Mira, and Lila were ready to meet them. Not with fear, but with human courage, human intelligence, and human heart. The real story they knew was only beginning. The morning came slowly over the colony. The storm had passed completely, leaving the fields wet and shining. Daniel walked outside to check the crops, but his mind was not on the plants. He was thinking about Mira. She had stayed awake most of the night, checking systems and scanning signals. Her presence was calm yet tense, like a quiet warning. Lila ran to him from the small barn, holding a note she had drawn. "Look," she said. "The stars are different today." Daniel looked up. The stars were normal, but he saw the point in her words. To a child who had watched the sky carefully, even small changes seemed important. He shook his head and smiled faintly. "You are right. They do seem different." Inside, Mira was awake too. She had moved quietly through the house, checking the sensors and communication devices. Daniel noticed she was more focused than ever. She spoke little, but every glance, every movement showed preparation. She had been training, studying, and planning, even while resting. Daniel brought her breakfast. "You need to eat," he said. "You've been up all night?" "I will," Mira said, but she did not eat much. Her eyes stayed on the small radar panel. Blips had moved closer. The signals she had tried to block were still active. Someone was coming. Daniel realized he had to know more. "Who exactly are they? The ones hunting you?" "They were supposed to be my protectors once," Mira said quietly. "My company's security. Now they hunt me because I refused orders. They are precise. They do not hesitate. They will come for me no matter where I hide." Daniel felt a cold weight in his chest. The quiet colony was not safe. The idea of armed professionals hunting someone across a planet made him uneasy. Yet, Mira did not panic. That steadiness gave him courage. "They are strong," Daniel said. "You should not face them alone." "I know," Mira said, "which is why I stayed with you. You and your daughter have something they do not expect. You are ordinary. You can hide in plain sight. You can act without fear." Daniel frowned. "I am not a fighter. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they must," she replied. "You will see." The first signals of the hunters appeared mid-morning. Small ships dropped from orbit into the colony perimeter. They were sleek, metallic, with engines that hummed silently over the fields. Daniel spotted them through his binoculars. They moved carefully, scanning each house, each path. "They are close," Mira said. She did not sound afraid. She moved to the small barn and opened a storage compartment. Inside were a few old tools, farm machinery, and scrap metal. To Daniel, it looked useless against ships. To Mira, it was an arsenal of possibilities. "They will not just come in quietly," she explained. "They will send scouts first. They want to avoid unnecessary loss. They assume I am alone. That is their mistake." Daniel asked, "What do we do?" Mira studied the machinery. "We use what we have. We set traps. We use the land. We use the ordinary knowledge of humans." Daniel blinked. "Ordinary knowledge?" "Yes," she said. "They rely on technology and force. Humans survive because of observation, creativity, and courage. We have that." "Ha! They do not." He realized she was planning a defense, not an attack. She wanted to protect, not destroy. It gave him hope. By afternoon, Mira had Lila practicing quietly. She showed the girl how to hide in shadows, how to move without sound, and how to observe patterns. Lila took it as a game, but Daniel saw the seriousness behind it. His daughter was learning skills that might save lives. Suddenly, Daniel noticed movement across the fields. Two figures appeared at the edge of the property. Armed, dressed in black suits that reflected light strangely, they moved methodically. Not soldiers, not ordinary humans. They were agents. Daniel felt a surge of fear. "They are here," he whispered. Mira nodded. "Keep calm. They are not here to negotiate." One agent raised a communicator and spoke. The words were clipped, professional. Daniel could not understand fully, but the tone was clear. They wanted someone. They believe the farm was empty. They think it is safe, Mira said. We will prove them wrong. Daniel's hands shook slightly. He was a farmer, not a soldier. Yet Mira moved with confidence, preparing traps with tools, ropes, and old machinery. She used the environment cleverly, mud pits, old plows, and hidden signals to confuse the agents. The agents moved closer. They scanned, using small drones that floated silently. One drone hovered over the barn. Mira triggered a reflective panel she had hidden. The drone's sensors blinked and malfunctioned. One agent cursed quietly. They will adapt, Mira said, but not fast enough. We have time. Daniel followed her instructions carefully. Each move was precise. Each trap was set with patience. The ordinary farm became a labyrinth of defense, powered by human ingenuity, not machines. The agents tried to force entry into the house. Mira's planning delayed them. A false path led them away from the barn. Daniel realized that she had expected their moves before they happened. Hours passed. The sun began to set. Daniel, Mira, and Lila worked quietly, using shadows and strategy. Mira's calm presence guided Daniel. Lila followed instructions perfectly, hiding in plain sight and observing the agent's patterns. Finally, the lead agent spoke into a communicator again. His voice was frustrated. They are gone, he said. She is not here. All systems show nothing. Daniel realized they had succeeded. They had delayed the hunters, avoided direct confrontation, and used the human mind against advanced technology. Mira smiled faintly. They will not give up easily, she said. But we have shown them they cannot rush blindly. That is the first step. Daniel felt a mixture of relief and fear. They had survived the first encounter, but he knew it was only the beginning. Night fell. The colony was quiet again. Mira stayed up, checking sensors and communication devices. Daniel and Lila slept briefly, exhausted from the tension. Mira's presence filled the house with energy. She did not just plan, she taught. She prepared them for what was coming. Daniel realized that he was no longer just a father protecting his daughter. He was part of a strategy that could outsmart trained hunters. The first day of pursuit had ended. The colony was safe for now, but the real test had only begun. Mira's secrets, the agent's persistence, and the unknown forces waiting beyond the system would all converge. Daniel understood something new. Ordinary humans could survive extraordinary danger if they thought, observed, and acted with courage. And Mira, a stranger in the storm, had brought that knowledge to their small home. As he looked out at the stars, Daniel whispered to himself, "We are ready." Mira, in the quiet of the night, stared at the sky too. She knew the hunters would return, stronger and smarter. But she had found allies in the most unexpected place. A single father, his brave daughter, and a farm that had become a fortress. The night was calm. The storm had passed, but a larger danger moved quietly, patiently, and they were ready to meet it head on. The next morning was colder than the last. Frost formed on the edges of the small pond near Daniel's house, and the wind carried a sharp edge across the fields. Daniel woke early, feeling restless. Mira had been awake before dawn, moving through the house with quiet purpose. She did not sleep well. She had barely closed her eyes the night before. Daniel brewed tea for both of them. Lila was still asleep, wrapped in a blanket. He carried the cup to Mira, who was checking the radar panel once again. The signals from the hunters were faint but still present. Their ships had moved slightly but had not left the system. They were waiting, watching, calculating. "They are patient," Mira said quietly. "They will wait for the smallest mistake. One misstep and they will strike." Daniel nodded. We have tricks, traps, and planning. We can keep them away. Yes, Mira said, but they have technology we cannot see, sensors we cannot detect. They assume we will act predictably. That is their mistake. She turned her attention to the barn. We need to prepare further, not for attack, but for survival. If they enter the colony in force, ordinary tools will not stop them, but ordinary knowledge can. Daniel followed her outside. She moved confidently across the wet ground, inspecting fences, old plows, mud pits, and tree lines. She pointed to places that could hide sensors or trip small alarms. These fields, she said, are more valuable than you think. They give us space to maneuver, to see them before they see us. They give us advantage if we use them correctly. Daniel was surprised. He had lived here for years and never thought of the land this way. Mira was teaching him to see the ordinary world in extraordinary ways. While they worked, Lila woke and joined them. Mira knelt and spoke to her. "You will help us watch," she said. "Your eyes are sharp. You see things adults often miss. That is strength." Lila smiled proudly and ran to the tree line. She kept low, observing the horizon. Mira watched her carefully. Daniel realized Mira was training his daughter not just to hide, but to think strategically. By mid-morning, Daniel noticed movement far across the fields. Distant vehicles appeared near the perimeter of the colony. They moved slowly, carefully, scanning. He pointed them out to Mira. "They are not alone," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes narrowed. "They have brought more than scouts this time. They are planning to enter. They want to force me into their hands." Daniel felt a rush of fear. These were not ordinary agents. These were professionals, armed and trained to capture a person without hesitation. He looked at Mira. "Can we stop them?" She smiled faintly, not with joy, but with confidence. "No, but we can delay them. We can confuse them. We can survive until we have time to act decisively." They moved quickly, setting small obstacles, adjusting signals, creating false paths across the fields. Daniel followed her instructions, doing things he never imagined, setting trip lines, using mirrors to reflect sensor scans, hiding behind trees with signals that mimicked presence. The agents entered the colony carefully. They split into teams, scanning buildings, looking for signs of life. Drones hovered, and holographic sensors swept across the land. Daniel held his breath as Mira guided him and Lila from one hiding place to another. One drone moved close to the barn. Mira triggered a reflective surface hidden in the roof. The drone's sensors malfunctioned, spinning away. Daniel watched in awe. She had predicted their moves, used the environment, and created chaos without firing a single shot. "They will adapt," she said, "but not fast enough." Hours passed. The agents became frustrated. They spoke into communicators, coordinating with each other. Daniel could not understand all their words, but he could sense the tension. The hunters were no longer confident. Mira's traps worked perfectly. Ordinary objects, simple knowledge of the land, and human patience kept them at bay. Daniel realized she was not just clever. She understood human psychology as well as technology. She knew how to anticipate fear, greed, and haste. Lila, hiding behind a fence, observed silently. She pointed to a small movement near the edge of the field. "There," she whispered. "He is watching the barn." Mira nodded. "Good. Stay hidden. Do not be seen. Observe only." Daniel was amazed. His daughter, once playful and carefree, had become part of their plan. She was learning strategy and observation faster than he could have imagined. By late afternoon, the hunters retreated slightly. thinking the farm was empty. Mira had led them into false paths and created signals that suggested she had left the property. Daniel understood the cleverness behind it. They had survived the first serious attack without confrontation, but Mira knew the danger had only grown. She explained that the agents would return, stronger and smarter. They would not give up because their mission was critical. They think they are in control, she said, but patience and knowledge give us advantage. Daniel realized how much he had underestimated the power of planning, observation, and courage. He had thought survival meant hiding. Now he understood that humans could outthink machines and soldiers if they used their minds and hearts wisely. That night, Mira stayed awake, checking the sensors and communication panels. She taught Daniel how to read the signals, how to predict movement, and how to use every ordinary object as a potential advantage. Daniel noticed she often glanced at Lila, making sure she was safe and learning. Mira was not just a stranger. She was a teacher, a strategist, and a protector. The agents would return. That was certain. But Daniel now understood that he and his daughter were no longer passive. They had learned to see, to anticipate, and to act. They had become part of a defense far beyond ordinary farming life. As the night deepened, Mira spoke quietly to Daniel. "We have survived today. Tomorrow we will need to do more. Not with weapons, but with thought, patience, and courage. Humans are stronger than they realize. That is what the hunters will not understand." Daniel nodded. He understood now that survival was not just about hiding. It was about using every part of human nature: intelligence, observation, courage, and the willingness to protect what is important. Outside, the colony slept under quiet stars. The hunters were still out there, calculating and planning. But inside the small farmhouse, Daniel, Lila, and Mira had created a shield of strategy, knowledge, and human determination. The first test was over. They had survived with skill and intelligence. But Daniel knew the next challenge would be greater. Mira's past, the hunters, and the unknown dangers beyond the system would all converge soon. He looked at Mira. She was calm, but he could see the weight she carried. The hunters would not give up, and the galaxy beyond the colony was dangerous. But he also saw hope. Mira had shown them that ordinary people could become extraordinary when they acted together. Lila, sleepy but proud, whispered from her chair, "We can do it, right?" Daniel smiled and squeezed her hand. "Yes, we can." Mira looked at them both. "Yes," she said softly. "Together we can face what comes, not with fear, but with human courage." And as the night stretched on, the farm, the fields, and the quiet colony became more than a home. It became a place of preparation, strategy, and human heart. The storm had passed long ago, but the real challenge was just beginning. The hunters would return. The world beyond would intrude. And Daniel, Lila, and Mira would meet it not as victims, but as humans ready to survive, fight, and protect. The calm of the night was only temporary, but inside, a plan, fragile and brilliant, was taking shape. And for the first time, Daniel felt that even a single father, a small child, and a stranger could face a galaxy of danger and perhaps change its course. The morning arrived cold and still, the kind of morning that made Daniel feel the quiet before a storm. The fields were silver with frost, and the air was crisp. He had barely slept, his mind running through all the possible ways the hunters might return. Mira had been awake long before him, moving through the house, checking sensors and making adjustments. She spoke little, but every glance, every movement carried meaning. Daniel brewed tea and carried it to the table where Mira was seated. She accepted it with a nod, taking slow sips while watching the horizon through the small window. Lila had woken early too, and she quietly observed from the corner, her small hands folded in front of her. She had learned to watch without being noticed, to notice without speaking. "They are coming," Mira said finally. "I can feel it. They have not left the system. Their signals are faint, but active. They wait for a mistake." Daniel sat heavily, understanding the weight of her words. The hunters were not ordinary. They were trained, professional, and ruthless. They would not give up. Every moment of delay was precious, but they had to be ready. "What do we do?" he asked. "We prepare," Mira said simply. "Not to fight, but to survive. If we appear ordinary, we have the advantage. They will underestimate us. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they must." Daniel nodded, knowing she was right. He had spent his life thinking about survival in simple terms: crops, tools, weather. Now survival meant strategy, observation, and courage. They moved through the fields, setting small signals and adjustments to sensors, preparing the terrain. Mira directed Daniel in subtle changes, placing mirrors to reflect light, moving old plows to create barriers, and setting hidden alarms. Everything was designed to confuse, delay, and observe, rather than to attack. Lila followed quietly, her eyes sharp. Mira taught her how to observe patterns, note small movements, and recognize danger without being seen. The girl's focus amazed Daniel. She was learning quickly, becoming part of a plan far beyond her age. By mid-morning, Daniel noticed distant movement near the colony perimeter. Sleek vehicles moved slowly, scanning, sending signals. He pointed them out to Mira. "They are testing the area," she said. "They think we are unaware. That is their first mistake." The agents moved closer. Drones hovered ahead of them, and small sensors swept the land. Daniel felt his heart beat faster, but he kept calm. Mira guided him and Lila from one hiding place to another, teaching them patience and observation. A drone moved near the barn. Mira activated a reflective panel, causing the drone to malfunction. One of the agents cursed quietly, and Daniel realized how clever her plan was. Every ordinary object had become a tool, every simple space a fortress. Hours passed. The agents grew frustrated, communicating in clipped, professional tones. Daniel could not understand all the words, but the tension was clear. The hunters were no longer confident. Mira's planning and the human advantage of observation and patience had worked. They had delayed the hunters, forced them to second-guess, and made them waste time. Daniel felt a sense of pride, knowing that human intelligence could outmatch even advanced technology. As afternoon turned to evening, the agents began to retreat slightly. Mira had led them into false paths, used signals to mislead, and created confusion that bought them valuable time. Daniel understood the significance. They had survived without direct confrontation, but the danger had only grown. "They will return," Mira said quietly, "stronger, smarter, and more determined. But now we know their patterns. Now we can prepare further." Daniel realized that the farm, the fields, and the small house were no longer ordinary. They were part of a defense strategy, guided by knowledge, courage, and human ingenuity. Leela, quiet and attentive, had become an essential part of that plan, learning skills that could save lives. That night, Mira remained awake, checking sensors and communications, adjusting signals, and teaching Daniel how to anticipate movements. He followed her instructions, learning how to read the subtle signs, how to predict the hunter's behavior, and how to use ordinary objects to extraordinary effect. Daniel noticed Mira's focus on Lila. She ensured the girl was safe, learning and participating in a way that built confidence. Mira was more than a stranger. She was a protector, a teacher, and a strategist. The agents would return, that was certain. But Daniel and Mira had created a system of observation, preparation, and delay that gave them advantage. Human courage, intelligence, and patience had become their strongest weapons. As the night deepened, Mira spoke softly to Daniel. "We have survived today. Tomorrow we will need to do more. Not with weapons, but with strategy, patience, and courage. Humans are stronger than they believe. That is what the hunters will not understand." Daniel nodded. He understood now that survival was not just hiding. It was using every part of human nature: intelligence, observation, courage, and the willingness to protect what matters most. Outside, the colony was quiet under the stars. The hunters remained somewhere in the system, waiting, calculating. But inside the small farmhouse, Daniel, Leela, and Mira had created a shield built on human thought, skill, and heart. The first serious test was over. They had survived using intelligence and ingenuity. Daniel knew the next challenge would be greater. Mira's past, the hunter's persistence, and unknown dangers beyond the system would all converge. He looked at Mira. She was calm, yet he could see the weight she carried. The hunters would not give up, but here in the quiet farmhouse, hope had been forged. Lila, sleepy but attentive, whispered from her chair, "We can do it, right?" Daniel smiled and squeezed her hand. "Yes, we can." Mira nodded. "Together we can face what comes, not with fear, but with courage, with thought, and with heart." The night stretched on, and the farm, the fields, and the small colony became more than home. They became a place of preparation, strategy, and human determination. The real challenge was just beginning, and Daniel, Lila, and Mira would meet it not as victims, but as humans ready to survive, protect, and outthink those who hunted them. The calm was temporary. The hunters would return. The galaxy beyond the colony was dangerous. But inside the farmhouse, a plan was taking shape. Fragile, clever, and human. And Daniel knew that ordinary people could become extraordinary when the stakes were highest. The night passed quietly, yet every rustle, every distant signal reminded them that the world beyond their fields was waiting, and the real battle was only just beginning. The morning arrived with a quiet tension over the colony. Daniel woke first, noticing the faint glow of distant ships in orbit. The night had been restless. Mira had barely slept, moving through the house, checking signals, adjusting sensors, and teaching him how to anticipate every possible movement. Lila had woken early as well, already practicing the skills Mira had taught her, observing the surroundings, noting patterns, and keeping quiet. Daniel made breakfast, but no one spoke much. The calm was only surface deep. Mira stood by the window watching the sky. The alien ships from the outer system had not moved closer yet, but their presence was unmistakable. They were not ordinary hunters. Their intentions were clear. These were strike forces, sent to force a person's hand or to threaten. "They are waiting," Mira said. "They will not give up. They have learned from the last encounters. Now they will come prepared." Daniel nodded. "We are ready? For what we can do, yes," she replied. "But this is bigger than traps and signals. This is a test of patience, courage, and human choice." He understood the weight of her words. The previous days had taught them how ordinary humans could outthink soldiers and technology. But now, the stakes were higher. These visitors were not just looking for her. They were looking to claim a weapon, to control power, to change the course of systems. Mira moved to the small barn where they had stored tools and machinery. She inspected everything, not just for defense, but for strategic possibilities. She worked quickly, guiding Daniel to adjust small mechanisms, to create signals and false trails. Every ordinary object became part of a plan. Lila followed quietly, her eyes bright. Mira knelt and spoke softly to her. You are part of this. Observe carefully. Every movement matters. Lila nodded, understanding the importance even if she did not grasp the full danger. By midday, movement appeared across the fields. Small ships approached the colony perimeter, hovering above the trees. Their engines hummed silently. Daniel raised binoculars and observed. Sleek, metallic, perfectly designed for efficiency. They were precise, professional, and dangerous. They are not aliens yet, Mira said. They are scouts. They will signal the strike force if they find me. We must act before that happens. Daniel felt a mix of fear and resolve. He had survived the first encounters, but this was the real test. Mira moved quickly, setting traps, reflective panels, and false signals. Daniel followed her instructions, learning to anticipate movements, to use shadows, mud, and trees to conceal their presence. Lila did the same, observing patterns, noting every detail, and hiding in ways that seemed invisible. The scouts moved across the property. One drone hovered near the barn. Mira activated a reflective panel, and the drone malfunctioned, spinning away. Daniel marveled at her planning. They were using ordinary land and tools to fight a force far stronger. Hours passed with the scouts probing, analyzing, and signaling. Daniel realized the intelligence and patience required. Every move had to be careful. One mistake, and the strike force would arrive. Mira remained calm, guiding them through every step. Finally, the alien strike force appeared above the colony. Their ships were larger, armed, and menacing. The horizon glowed with their energy shields and hovering weapons. Daniel felt the weight of reality. This was no longer a training exercise. Lives and worlds hung in balance. Mira spoke quietly. Do not act rashly. Show them what humans can do with courage and intelligence. She activated a small communication device, transmitting a clear message to the approaching ships. Her voice was calm but strong. I am not your enemy. I am not here to fight. You may test us, but know this: humans protect those who seek shelter, even without reward. We choose life over violence. The strike force paused. Their sensors analyzed her signal. They were not used to such responses, messages that carried both caution and confidence. For a moment, curiosity replaced aggression. Daniel understood. Mira had used not weapons, but human choice. The alien force hesitated, uncertain. They had not expected humans to act with courage and compassion instead of fear. The colony remained tense. Daniel, Mira, and Lila stayed in their positions, ready for any move. Yet the hesitation of the strike force gave them the advantage. They did not attack immediately. They hovered, observing, calculating. Mira sent another message, this time showing evidence of the illegal weapon her former company had tried to sell. The broadcast reached the alien ships and beyond. Daniel realized the significance. Proof of greed and danger exposed, even to beings from another system. The aliens responded with caution. They retreated slightly, signaling to reconsider their approach. Mira had bought time, and more than that, she had changed their perception. Humans were not just small, weak, and vulnerable. They were clever, compassionate, and unpredictable. The hunters on the ground, her former security team, were now isolated. They had no support from orbit and no easy way to reach her. Daniel's preparation and Mira's strategy had turned the tables. Ordinary land, ordinary humans, and careful observation had delayed and confused forces far stronger. As night fell, Mira deactivated traps, adjusting only the necessary defenses. Daniel realized that their home, the farm, the barn, the fields, had become more than a refuge. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and heart. Mira turned to Daniel. Your people have done well. The colony has shown that human strength is not just in weapons or technology. It is in courage, intelligence, and the will to protect others. That is what they do not understand. Daniel nodded. He had learned more in these days than in all the years he had lived quietly on the colony. His daughter, once playful and unaware, had become an observer, a strategist in training, a protector in her own right. Lila smiled faintly, understanding the importance of her role. The strike force remained in orbit, hesitant and cautious. Mira's broadcast had done more than save them. It had changed perception. They had survived not through force, but through human values. Later, Mira spoke quietly to Daniel. My board is gone. Corrupt people have been exposed. The weapon will not be sold. The galaxy has seen that humans act differently, and that choice matters. Daniel understood the magnitude. Mira was more than a CEO, more than a hunted person. She represented intelligence guided by conscience. Her escape had shown that courage and compassion could triumph over greed and violence. She offered Daniel a position, a life among the stars, a partnership beyond the colony. Daniel looked at his fields, his daughter, and the quiet farmhouse. He smiled. I choose here, but we will work together. Mira nodded, understanding. She visited often, not as a leader commanding obedience, but as a friend who once needed shelter and found more than just safety. She found human courage and heart. The night was calm. The stars shone brightly, and the colony slept under their watchful light. The hunters had gone, the galaxy had shifted, and the small farm had changed more than anyone expected. Human ingenuity, kindness, and courage had made the difference. Daniel looked at Lila and Mira. We survived, he said softly. Yes, Mira replied. And we taught them something they will never forget. Humans are stronger than they believe. In the quiet house, the fields, and under the stars, they had found something extraordinary. Shelter had become strategy. Compassion had become power. And ordinary humans had become heroes in ways the galaxy would remember. The storm had passed long ago, but the real victory had been the human heart. Courage, kindness, and intelligence had triumphed. And for Daniel, Leela, and Mira, life continued, not just as survivors, but as a family bound by choice, trust, and the unyielding strength of humanity.